Hi there everybody, Kyle Sasser here. It's everybody's favorite time of the month. That's right, real estate market statistics time. These real estate market statistics are for Hillsborough County for March 2026. So what do we need to know about these numbers and statistics? What are we looking at? What are we interpreting? So what we always try to do is we try to compare year over year, meaning we compare March, meaning we compare February 2026 to February 2025. The reason we do that is because the calendar year has a natural ebb and flow to it. It tends to follow the school year as well as the seasons. So for example, things are pretty slow through the winter holidays, and also whenever school starts up, things really slow down. So again, we usually compare year over year versus month to month because, again, some months are just naturally going to be slower. Now, the second thing you're probably asking is, why am I calling these the March stats if the numbers are actually for February? And the reason why is because full month is kind of the best snapshot that we have that removes a lot of variables, right? So like if we try to compare a week to a week, well, holidays move around, weather moves around, so all of those variables have huge impacts on how many buyers are going out and looking at homes and how many homes go under contract and how many sell in any particular given period of time. So week to week and day to day, not a good time period for real estate. However, months, long enough time in there, everything kind of gets evened out. That's a very nice time period to compare. February is obviously a little tricky because sometimes February is 28 days and then one time it's 29 days every 4 years. So you kind of have to keep that in the back of your mind because every now and then 1 February will be considerably different. But again, it's kind of the best metrics we have, and that's what we roll with. So if you remember back to your mathematics classes, you might remember mean, median, mode, average, and median, those sorts of things. Mode we don't really use too much. Average, everyone kind of knows what an average is. You take, let's say, 5 homes that have sold, you add all of the prices together, you divide it by 5, and that gives you an average. Median is a little different though. What a median price is let's say that you have 80 homes that have sold. The median point is, it's the point where there's an equal number of homes priced higher and lower. It's kind of that balance point. The median price point tends to give a little bit better idea of what the market is doing because it removes a lot of the variability. So like if a large number of very inexpensive houses sell, or if like 1 or 2 extraordinarily expensive houses sell, that can really move the average around. But median tends to remove the effect that those far extremes have, which are not the vast majority of the market. So again, there can be some peculiarities with median, but again, there's no perfect metric in the world. So we kind of have to do the best with what we have, which is median sales price. So let's dive into these numbers for Hillsborough County for March 2026. Total number of closed sales was down 0.19%. I call that basically holding steady. It's not really until you get to 4, 5, 6% is 5, 6, 7% is where I start to see that it is something other than just kind of natural variance. But closed sales down 0.19% from 1,044 to 1,042 homes sold. Cash sales were down 14.62% from 260 to 222. Median sales price was up a touch, 1.19% from 420 to 425,000. Average sales price was down 1.85% from 553,000 to 543,000. Median percent of original list price also holding 95.9% to 95.4%. The main thing that has moved is median time to contract. That has gone from 38 days to 53 days, which is an increase of 39.47%. And at 53 days, that's definitely on the buyer's market side of things. Total number of new listings was down 1.57% from 1,660 to 1,634. Active inventory was up 2.9%, so just slightly, from 4,132 to 4,252. And foreclosures and short sales, there were 6 of each of those. The noteworthy thing, and this was also true in Pinellas, is short sales in Pinellas went from 0 to 5 and Hillsborough County went from 2 to 6, which is interesting because that has been very low for a long amount of time. Now, 6 homes out of 1,042, that is a very, very, very small percentage. That is not having any impact on the market, but it is something that is a little different. And I will say I have been getting a few more calls about foreclosures, and people kind of asking questions about selling the house while they're, upside down on the mortgage. I've started getting a few more of those questions. Again, not anywhere close to 2008 levels of, issues. So 6 is definitely a lot from 0 or 2 in this case, but it's also very short of the hundreds of homes per month that we had back in 2009, 2010, 2011. You need a large portion of the market in that position to move the needle on pricing. And so it's noteworthy that it's been a shift. If anything, I would say the last 5 years, short sales and foreclosures have been abnormally low, primarily because home prices have been increasing so steadily and so much that people didn't have the chance to be upside down on their mortgage. It was very easy to sell the house, pay off whatever mortgage or second mortgage they took out, and pocket, $20, $30, $40,000. And so that's what people had been doing. Now, I do like to cover the different price categories because a $1 million house sells at a little bit different time frame than a $400,000 house. And that's primarily just going to be because of the buyer pool, right? Like there's more people that can buy a $400,000 house. And so more demand usually means that things sell a little bit faster. I also tend to not read every line of this because that gets a little monotonous, both for you and for me. So again, I tend to cover overall trends with this and point out any interesting tidbits and facts. So total number of closed sales broken down by price category. There's not too much that is for sale or that has sold below, I would say, 250,000. There's definitely more than there had been in previous years, but still not a large number of them. There's maybe 60 homes under 250,000 that sold in all of Hillsborough County. You really start to see the bulk of the market at 300 to 400,000, which held steady at 325 homes sold. That was only a 0.62% increase. 400 to 600,000 was a 1.8% increase to 340. 600 to a million, which I would describe as kind of the tough part of the market currently, it's down 13.51% in total number of sales to 160. So that's definitely, a little bit of a chunk taken out of that segment of the market. Median time to contract is up across the board. I always like big percentages because those make for flashy headlines. 150 to 200,000, median time to contract is up 400% to 45 days. 300 to 400,000 is up 15.22% to 53 days. 400 to 600,000 is up 44.74% to 55. 600 to a million is up 92% to 48 days. So what that tells us is the market has, for what is selling, it's taking a lot longer for them to sell than last year. Total new listings is up for most price categories with the exception of 600 and above. So 600 to a million was down 16.61% to 266 million or more was down 10% to 160. But 250 to 300 was up 14.44% to 103. 300 to 400 had 13.73% more listings. More new listings at 472. And then total inventory is also up across all price categories with the exception of 600,000 to a million, which was down 2.68% to 763. The bulk of the market is in the 300 to 400 category, which has 6.24% more houses available at 1,141, and then 400 to 600,000 held at 0.97% increase to 1,460 homes. So those are the numbers for Hillsborough County for March 2026. So what can we make of these numbers for the Tampa Bay area, Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, and kind of looking back towards the hurricanes and all that stuff. So Hillsborough County, overall, the market is a lot slower today than it was last year. That shows up clearly in the time to contract number, right? It's gone from 28, 30 days to 55, 45, 55 days. And anything above 35, 38. So 30, 35, 40-ish is kind of neutral market. And then anything above 45 is really on the buyer's market side. A little deceptive though, because median sales price has not reduced because of that. So we have a leading indicator, which is what median time to contract tends to lead where prices are going. But I think it's a little deceptive because the number of sales is the same and the inventory is similar to slightly down, and the number of new listings are also down. And also the other piece of that, which is the percent of original asking price, has not moved that much either. So what that tells me is that more houses that have been on the market for longer are selling, but they're not selling for lower than is typical. I will say, just kind of industry shop talk, both like in person and, online, and looking at showings, looking at my listings, seeing how many showings we're getting, dealing with buyers. The overall feel is that things are slowed down. Buyers are taking more time to find the house. They're definitely being a little more aggressive on negotiations and a little more hesitant to make offers than previous times, because the overall feeling is there is a large amount of things to choose from, and the buyers kind of have the upper hand at this point. Now, that's the sentiment. The price numbers don't necessarily reflect that, because Hillsborough County has been right within, it is still within that price band, and you can go back through pretty much 2 years of these videos, and you will see that every time I talk about Hillsborough numbers for the last 2 years, they're basically within a $10,000 to $15,000 price band, right? Like 420, 425 to like 435, 440. It's just been bouncing between there. Inventory is up from where it was a few years ago, but it has stalled so far as continuing to increase. And the weird thing was, through the wintertime, inventory actually declined a little bit. So overall, it's a bit of a quirky market currently. It's definitely not the slam dunk that it was even last year. Like last year, the demand certainly came back a lot stronger, faster. And so, showings started showing up. This year, it's been definitely more of a slow roll increase, which we see in the numbers as well. I'm kind of curious to see what the April numbers are going to look at, because that's usually when we see what summertime is probably going to look like. So basically what I would describe it as is, so whenever you have like median price band, and we kind of been bouncing that, and St. Pete has as well, the shifts in the numbers in Pinellas County is a little odd, because you do have to remove the flood damaged areas, because they are a completely different market currently. When you remove the flood damaged areas, what you find is that mainland Pinellas County prices actually went up after the hurricanes, and then through wintertime they came down about $10,000, $13,000, $14,000, $15,000 through the wintertime 2025 to 2026, whereas Hillsborough County has held very steady. So whenever you have like a relatively steady price band, you have a leading indicator kind of showing one thing, but then the price isn't doing the other thing, and everyone's kind of like, what's going on? What that means to me is the market is currently at a decision point, and it hadn't really been at a decision point in previous years, because it had been even though everyone believes that June 2022 was a crazy peak of the market, which it was so far as demand for the number of homes that were for sale, right? Like we were getting 30 to 40 offers on houses. That does not happen anymore. It was peak craziness for that. However, after that, even though we were not getting 30 to 40 offers, prices were still steadily marching up. What's happened now is that steady march up has stopped, and we have these other indicators, median time to contract lengthening. Basically, the seesaw has come up level. This is kind of the best metaphor I can come up with it. The seesaw has definitely come up to level. It has come up the last couple years, and then what's always happened is, very clearly, buyers came back, demand came back, and we went back into seller's market territory. The difference today is that time to contract is higher than it had been, and the number of sales is such that demand is not increasing, it is holding, and inventory is higher than it has been for years. Even though it's slightly less than last year, it is still the highest it has been in probably 5-6 years. So the seesaw is definitely so let's say, 2025, the seesaw is like this, and then it came up like this. And what I'm seeing in these numbers is it's definitely come up a little bit more level. Now, what it would take to go the other way is time to contract needs to go higher, and then we should also see month supply go above, significantly above 3. And at that point, that is when we will know that median sales price will more than likely start declining. Now, many of you are probably saying, well, it's obvious that's what's going to happen because real estate bubble and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is we have a lot of other positive factors that have come in that people are still learning about, primarily interest rates. Interest rates are currently the lowest they have been since 2022. So currently interest rates are the lowest they have been since 2022. We had, for years, had been at high 6s to high 7s for interest rates. And currently we are easily in the mid 5s for most buyers and can definitely go lower than that, you know, with buying points down or VA loans and stuff like that. And the Fed just came out and, you know, they're not reducing rates further, but they also haven't increased rates either. So, you know, that getting on people's radar, lower interest rates usually brings more buyers to the market. So yes, time to contract has grown. We are only selling 1/3 of the houses that are for sale every month. Normally that would push into a buyer's market and declining median sales price. However, because interest rates have come down 1.5%, 2%, depending upon the last time buyers were looking at it, that tends to increase demand. And so I would normally think that we should see the buyers pick up. We should see closed sales also starting to increase. And then the additional piece here is new listings has not increased. And so if new listings do not increase, the number of buyers does increase. That means inventory reduces, time to contract will eventually shorten up again, and then we will be back to increasing home prices. I know it took quite a while to explain all that, but it's very simple supply demand stuff. You know, currently things are pretty balanced so far as supply and demand. You know, 3 months is a pretty level market, shorter than 3 months so far as typically when you start to see shorter, less than 3 months of supply, you know, you tend to see increasing home values. And when you see more than 3 months supply, you know, when you start seeing like 4, 5, 6 months supply, that's when you see a very strong buyer's market where median home prices start coming down. So again, we're at kind of inflection point. And honestly, we need another month or two of data to kind of see what this year is going to do. I tend to be an optimist, so I do think that the buyers are going to return and the market is going to hold or even increase slightly. That is, generally speaking, economically, holding steady is much better than a price decline. Price decline comes with a lot of economic knock-on problems, you know, so far as economic productivity and just, you know, it stalls out a lot of stuff. And that's also what real estate tends to do, right? Like, so true price declines where you see 10% knocked off of a house price, those are exceedingly rare. And what usually happens is real estate makes a big move and then it holds for a while. You know, 2009 was the Great Recession was a little unique in that it was a long multi-year slide. That's just not what typically happens with real estate downturns. So honestly, not looking to put money on which way this market's going to go, because we definitely have a lot of mixed signals coming in here, and that definitely, to me, always indicates that the market overall is deciding which way it wants to go. So yeah, that's the analysis for the Tampa Bay area. So thank you so much for watching this market report for the Tampa Bay, for Hillsborough County and Pinellas County. If you would like help finding your own great place in the Tampa Bay area, I would love to help you out. You can reach me at 727-300-2111. That is my real phone number. You can call it, I will answer it. You can also follow the link in the description down below. That'll take you to my calendar, and you can book a chat at the time that works best for you. I'd love to have a conversation. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Kyle Sasser, and I'll talk to you soon.